Students, previous sessions we have seen the mechanism of normal labor and physiology of normal labor. Today we will see what are the signs and symptoms of true onset of true labor. So signs and symptoms of onset of true labor. So the onset of labor appears to be the result of a combination of factors like hormonal and neuronal, and there is no single cause for the onset of true labor, and people believe that there are hormonal and neuronal factors which are responsible for onset of true labor. It is possible that some signal is given from the fetoplacental unit which plays a major role in estrogen metabolism depending on changes in fetal pituitary adrenal activity. The fetal adrenal cortex produces precursors for the synthesis of estrogens which will rapidly rise during the last week of gestation. Then the oxytocin from the posterior pituitary gland has a stimulating action on the pregnant uterus and can be used to induce labor. So oxytocin that is produced by the posterior pituitary gland has a stimulating action on the pregnant uterus which induces labor, and progesterone has a sedative action on uterine muscle to its withdrawal at the end of pregnancy which may facilitate the onset of labor. So we have seen in physiological changes during pregnancy that progesterone is responsible for continuation of pregnancy. So sudden withdrawal of this pregnancy at the end of pregnancy may facilitate the onset of labor, and also oxytocin from the posterior pituitary. Not only these two hormones but also prostaglandins that are thought to be synthesized in the decidua at a term in response to the release of estrogens by the fetoplacental unit. These prostaglandins are also responsible for the onset of true labor pains. Then increased contractibility as pregnancy advances. There is an increase in the contractibility of the uterus which becomes more susceptible to stimulation as the pregnant mother approaches term. The pressure of the presenting part and the nerve endings in the cervix may also play some part in the onset of true labor. And also experience shows that labor is likely to start on time when the head is engaged than when it is high. Engagement means when the fetal engaging diameter enters the pelvic inlet or pelvic bridge. We say it is head is engaged. Then assessment of women in labor. What is that we are going to observe? The women who is in labor. Assessment of maternal status, description of uterine activity, assessment of fetal status, and description of findings on vaginal exam if performed during cervical dilatation and effacement, fetal station, change in status of membranes, and progress since last exam should be assessed. So, if the examination is done every 4th hourly, so what is the progress of labor that is happening from one examination to the other examination? So, all these assessments are very important to be continued in for a woman who is in labor. So, assessment of maternal status. First, we will see assessment of maternal status. So, what are the premonitory signs of labor? So, what is that you are going to observe in the woman? During the 3 weeks previous to the onset of labor, that means 3 weeks prior to the onset of labor, certain changes takes place when manifest are useful to determine the approach of labor, that is lightening. Lightening is nothing but, you will see what is lightening in next slides. Then false pains, frequency of micturition and slight taking up of the cervix. These are the premonitory signs of labor. So lightening, what is lightening? So this is sinking of uterus which takes place about 2 to 3 weeks before term because of widening of symphysis pubis, softening and relaxing of the pelvic floor muscles, allowing the uterus to descend further into the true pelvis. The abdomen becomes pendulous. So walking will be more difficult. The woman will feel very difficult to walk, and relaxation of the pelvic joints may give rise to backache or pain in the region of symphysis pubis, and the vaginal secretions become more profuse. So these are the important signs of true labor. Then frequency of micturition. This may be due to pressure of the fetal head on the bladder, limiting its capacity and requiring it to be emptied more often. That is why just 2 weeks just before the onset of labor, for especially in case of a primary mother, she feels to void more frequent times because of the this uterus causing some pressure on the bladder. And sometimes there is a state of mild incontinence or poor control of the urethral sphincter, which may be accounted for the lax condition of the soft and pelvic floor at this time. And not only due to fetal head compressing the bladder, but also due to the relaxation of the soft pelvic floor muscles, the urethral sphincter loses its control. That is why the mothers will have incontinence of urine. Then false pains. These are erratic and irregular, causing the uterus to contract and relax, whereas in true labor, the uterus contracts and retracts. See, just like labor pains, the mother may feel some sort of pains. See, if you just examine for other changes of other changes, no changes will be there, and there is no onset of true labor. Those pains which are erratic and irregular, we call them as false pains. Next, taking up of the cervix. Taking up of the cervix occurs because it is being drawn up and merged into the lower uterine segment, and shortening of cervix is usually looked for when in the interest of mother or child labor must be induced. See, whether taking up cervix is there or not, that has to be examined per vaginal examination. If it is there normally, then if just on per vaginal examination we feel shortening of the cervix. If there is no taking up of the cervix, or if there is taking up of the cervix and there is no progress of labor, then we must take wise decision whether to induce labor or not. And noting the child condition also, fetal condition also. And taking up of the cervix should not be confused with no cervix felt on vaginal examination, which denotes complete dilatation of the cervix and signifies the end of the first stage. See, if you just examine no cervix is felt on vaginal examination, it indicates complete cervical dilatation, that is 10 centimeters dilatation of the cervix will be there, and it signifies the end of first stage of labor. And you know very well, the first stage of labor starts with the onset of true labor pains and ends with the full cervical dilatation. Next, signs of true labor. See, painful, the contractions will be painful, rhythmic uterine contractions. The very strong painful pains will be there, and rhythmic uterine contractions. The mother may feel contractions or painful contractions every half an hour or every 45 minutes. Like that, the contractions will be rhythmic. And dilatation of cervix, as the previous slide we have seen what is dilatation of cervix, and presence of show. When the cervix is completely dilated, you can see some onset of true labor pains. We have seen some vaginal discharges. So through that vaginal discharge, some blood stained mucus secretions will be there, which we call as show. We'll see what is show. Next, uterine contractions, which are felt by the woman as tightening, discomfort or actual pains. During contraction, the uterus feels hard to touch. Each contraction begins painlessly. The pain gradually increases in intensity until it reaches its acme, then diminishing and ending painlessly. Slight backache also may be present. See, these the uterine contractions, the characteristic of uterine contractions, true uterine contractions. So, the uterus will feel very hard to touch, and each contraction begins starting painlessly, and the pain gradually increases in intensity until it reaches its peak, and then diminishing and ending painlessly. And during this uterine contractions, the mother may feel backache. Next, dilatation of cervical os. This is the enlargement of the external os from a circular opening which would admit sound to one sufficiently large to permit passage of fetal head. See, initially, when to say whether cervix is dilated or not, on pervaginal examination, you can see just the os admits only uterine sound or one finger only. And as the progression of cervical dilatation takes place, then it can admit the passage of the fetal head also. And the well flexed head that appears close to the cervix also helps in cervical dilatation. See, in mechanism of normal labor, we have seen descent. There is continuous and descent will be there throughout the labor process. So during this process of descent, when the cervical head reaches when the fetal head reaches the cervix, gradually it helps in cervical dilatation also. So in primigravida, the external os may be closed at the beginning of labor, or it may admit the tip of one finger and does not dilate until the cervix has completely taken up. But the internal os dilates during the process of taking up of the cervix in case of a primigravida. So in case of multiparous women, the external os usually admits one finger just prior to the onset of labor, and the dilatation of the external and internal os proceeds simultaneously with taking up of the cervix. So this is the difference between primigravida and multiparous women. Just by noting this, we can we can easily identify the primary mother may take some time for progression of labor, and in case of multiparous women, immediate all the this procedures takes place simultaneously. That is why how much time is required for labor we can easily assess. Next, presence of show. This is the blood-stained mucoid discharge seen a few hours before or within few hours after labor has started. The mucus is thick tenacious substance which forms then cervical plug or the operculum during pregnancy. The blood comes from the ruptured capillaries of the deciduo vera where the chorion has become detached from the dilating cervix. When the cervix is getting dilated, the chorion will be detached from the uterine wall. During this period, you can see the rupture of small capillaries which are attached to the deciduum, which are from the deciduo vera, which causes blood-stained mucus discharge. This is called show, and show is one of the important premonitory signs of onset of true labor. Next, rupture of membranes. Rupture of membranes cannot be taken as a sign of true labor. Why? Because in some people the rupture of membranes may take place before the onset of true labor, or in most of the cases the rupture of membranes takes place just before the second stage of labor starts. So, rupture of membranes cannot be taken as a sign of true labor, as this sometimes occurs a few days before labor begins or may occur until the end of second stage of labor. Next, duration of first stage of labor. There are wide variations in duration of labor depending on whether the woman is a primigravida or multigravida and on the time that has elapsed since the birth of her last child. The type of pelvis, size of pelvis and presentation of the fetus and the strength and frequency of uterine contractions, all these factors will influence the length of labor. The greatest part of labor is taken up with the first stage of labor. So this is first stage of labor is the only stage which takes more time. Next, so in primigravida, first stage may take 11 hours, second stage may take 30 minutes, third stage 30 minutes, total 12 hours. And in case of multipara, first stage may take 6.5 hours, second stage 30 minutes and 15 minutes, and third stage 15 minutes, total hours is 7 hours in case of multipara. Okay, so these are the premonitory signs of true labor. Next, we will see what is the preparation of a woman in labor room. When the woman is admitted to the labor room, what is the preparation she needs to be done? See, the pubic hair should be shaved or clipped to keep the vulva clean during labor and pubertal period. In some of the hospitals, this is not practiced. See, usually the just for the aesthetic purpose, the person whoever is conducting the labor, she may advise on shaving of the pubic hair. And the principle of swabbing technique is to clean vulva of secretions and organisms without contaminating the birth canal. So vulva should be always kept clean. The procedure varies from hospital to hospital, and some hospitals will not encourage shaving, but some of the hospitals will encourage shaving because to keep the vulva clean or the birth canal clean and septic, this practice may be, this cleaning shaving may be practiced. Next, in all cases, swabbing should be preceded by washing the pubis, groins, inner thighs and buttocks with soap and water unless a shower has been recently given. See, after shaving the pubic hair, then the mother can have a thorough bath. The vulva is swabbed on admission and at 6-hour intervals during labor as well as immediately preceding vaginal examination and delivery. So, the vulva may be swabbed when the woman is admitted, or at every 6 hour intervals the vulva may be swabbed or cleaned, and during labor as well as immediately preceding vaginal examination and delivery to keep the vulva clean and sterile. Next, evacuation of lower bowel. It is advisable that the lower bowel is emptied at the beginning of the labor. There is some connection between the nerve supply to the uterus and bowel, so that the stimulation of bowel appears to excite better uterine contractions. And also in some cases, in some of the cases, if the bowel is loaded, the progression of labor may be very slow. So, to avoid that, evacuation of lower bowel may be necessary, and it is advisable to make a vaginal examination to ascertain the degree of dilatation of the cervix, but the strength of uterine contractions and what has been accomplished since the onset of labor should be taken into consideration. So, degree of cervical. See, when the mother has admitted with the full cervical dilatation, and she may not need then evacuation of lower bowel. But when the woman is admitted before the onset of or just after the onset of true labors, then she can be given evacuation of lower bowel may be done to her. An empty rectum allows more room for the descent of the fetus. If the lower bowel is not emptied, the descending head will cause feces to be expelled immediately before and during the birth of the baby, and there is less soiling of the sterile field from a stool than the fluid from an enema given too late. Okay, so and also to avoid when during the labor or when the in second stage of labor, if the evacuation of lower bowel is not done, then there are chances of the mother to pass feces during second stage of the labor. So, to avoid soiling of the sterile field, evacuation of bowel may be done before the just immediately after the onset of labor. Also, if the cervix is fully dilated, this should not be done. Next, bath or shower. Bath or shower is given following or clipping the pubic hair and enema. If there is no time to give a thorough bath, an effort should be made to wash the woman from the umbilicus to the knees at least. If the mother is tolerable, then a thorough bath may be advised. Or if she is not able to, or if she is unable to take bath, then at least from the umbilicus to the knees level, it must be cleaned and kept neat. Next, care of hair. The hair is combed, inspected or pedicula in the hospital and subsequently treated if necessary. And long nails harbor organisms and may infect the woman's vulva during labor. So, and if at all the people who are attending the labor or who are attending the baby should also cut their nails short, because these long nails, there are chances of the long nails injuring the baby or newborn. Next, it is equally important that nail paint and lipstick should be removed during labor, and if the woman is told that her natural color is the best guide to how she is faring. The use of cosmetics may keep up her morale, and but obstetric precautions should also be observed. Suppose if the woman goes into hypovolemic shock or any cyanosis is there, which mean if she wears this nail polish and other lipstick, it may not be we may not be able to observe the mother if she at all she goes into cyanosis. So this may be removed or discouraged. Um, okay. So these are the important aspects that should be remembered. That should be remembered when the woman is admitted to the labor room, and how we have to prepare the woman during uh, labor. Okay, girls. In next session, we'll have some more topics.